Y'all want to see something that made me cry? I've been thinking about this for weeks now, and so I need to show someone. To be fair, I was in a very emotionally vulnerable spot when it made me cry. Earlier that day, the Dug Dug Otter song made me cry multiple times.
Damn! You can't just drop that on us?
But to be even fairer, that song makes everyone cry, so.
That all the orphan daughters would feel the guidance of a mother.
If you want to follow along at home, you can pull this up in a separate tab. We're going to be watching Starlit Princess Waltz, full show at Disneyland Paris 2018 with 8 princesses, including Belle, Cinderella from Mouse Steps, specifically this version from Mouse Steps. I promise this is interesting, just let me walk you through this. As we've read in the title, this is a Disneyland Paris princess show. I love live theme park entertainment. I also love Disney princesses, so this was always going to be a good time for me. But the fact that this is in Disney Paris means that half of the show is in French.
How did the day get away from me again?
Tu avais le nez plongé dans ton livre de contes de fées.
Which just makes it extra magic somehow. I don't know. We have 2 narrators.
I'm Rosie.
Salutations, chers invités, je suis Louis.
Rosie is your typical American millennial Disney adult, and Louis is her dumb French boyfriend. She's asking him if he's up on his Disney princess lore, and he clearly has not done the reading.
J'ai bien lu le livre de contes de fées, je le connais par cœur.
They accidentally spill a bunch of pixie dust, and the fairy tales come to life. Aurora comes out first, because she's kind of the main character of the show. She's the main character of the park. It's her castle. We're in France. She's speaking French.
Avez-vous accueilli nos invités royaux?
The vibe is all hers. But the rest of the princesses follow. Rosie takes the opportunity to make this a little pop quiz for Louis, making him play a little connect the dots game between the princesses and their stories.
Les enfants, kids, help me please.
And he somehow screws it up despite each of the princesses coming on stage and dramatically dancing as their stories are told. Stupid. Stupid boy. What were you thinking?
I don't know. Tangled. This is Tangled. How do you not know? I am 31.
I really like Cinderella's dress here. I think the muted bodice piece really works, especially with the pearls that they added, or like glitter bits. It's hard to tell from the footage. Regardless, I feel like it really works for her aesthetically. Her skirt has so much fluff to it, it just twirls perfectly. Definitely a highlight as opposed to like something like Belle's dress. On her, the lightened top just feels weirdly sun-bleached, and the movement of the hoop is much more noticeable. Cinderella also has this pattern lining the bottom of her skirt, which kind of reminds me of the little Disney magic sparkles. And it creates this nice scalloped pattern, which calls back to her original dress design. Anyway, major props to whoever designed this Cinderella look. It's definitely one of my favorites. Rapunzel makes a majestic entrance from the audience because that's absolutely her style. And Louis gives her fan to Ariel, even though Rosie tells him it's someone with long golden hair.
Princesse.
Look at this idiot. Everyone's laughing at him. The princesses do a cute little fan dance routine to a medley of different Disney princess songs. We transition into a song about how everyone in the audience is a princess. Yes, even you, adult male viewer who subscribed for my Ninjago content but managed to get this far into this video. You're a princess too.
And never forget that everyone is a princess.
And I know it's cliche and schmaltzy, but it does get to me a little bit. The tear ducts are firing up at this point. Louis gets a cute little solo dance with each of the princesses, which matches their personalities. I love Ariel's. Like, isn't that cute? And then it sneaks up on you if you're not paying attention. But all of the Disney princes sneak up behind the girls. This is insane to have this many Disney princes in one place. Are you kidding me?
I see a princess,
It's giving me Disney dudes vibes. Y'all remember that? I Am 5 pretended to be a bunch of the Disney princes trying to win the princesses back by singing a bunch of Disney mashups.
New fantastic point of view. no one to tell us no.
Early YouTube was fun. It's kind of fun to see how some of the princes prep themselves before their women turn around. Eugene crosses his arms, Naveen does this little look away and look back thing like, oh, I didn't see you there. And then after the reveal, we break into this short segment where all of the couples are doing their own thing. It makes for a beautifully chaotic stage, which I'm not really accustomed to seeing in shows like this. It's usually so pointedly coordinated, and yet here it feels like these characters are just spontaneously doing their own thing. Aladdin lifts Jasmine into the air for a dramatic spin. Raps and Eugene are just power spinning, and Snow White just skips around like the little middle schooler that she is. There's this part where all of the guys simultaneously lean in to tell the girls that they see a princess. I see a princess. And I think that's probably where the first tear broke through. I see a princess. This is too precious to not cry. Philip makes a big entrance looking fresh in his top hat before this great piece of choreo. Lots more dancing, quick transition to A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes. Rosie and Louis make their way down for the finale, and for the big finish, everyone strikes a pose. Rosie and Louis are like this because we don't really know what their relationship status is. Most of our girls are being dipped, dip, 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 reverse dip for Aurora because, you know, this is her show here. Eugene has lifted up Rapunzel in a way that feels very reminiscent of the resurrection scene at the end of the movie. Jasmine and Aladdin are back to back with their arms crossed like they're quirky adventuring buddies or something, which honestly perfect.
It's Jasmine and Aladdin.
Call us Aladdin.
And then there's my girl Cindy. Cinderella has a varying pose. This seems a little strange to me. On its face, a dip seems perfectly suitable for her. I don't know that I would necessarily call her out as prompting something different like our Tangled duo does. But he's kissing her hand and she's blushing. And this is where I started bawling. This is where I admit a weakness to the internet. A danger, I know, but Cinderella, specifically Disney's animated Cinderella, is my comfort character. I love this girl so very much. Everything about her makes me happy and always will. And part of that is the relationship that she and Charming have. It is beautiful, captivating, pure and distilled fantasy, which I think about far too often. And to see that exact energy from the film translated by choreographers and live performers into this real life medium is nothing short of magical to me, which is an insane stance for me to have to take because let's be real, who is this dude? Prince Charming is perhaps most famous for being the most nothing of any of the Disney princes. We're gonna be pinning the sequels for now, but as far as the original source material goes, this guy is the blankest of blank slates ever to exist. To the point where people regularly misuse his name to describe someone else. Even in the Disney Prince lineup, he stands out as being the most photo of a prince that came with the frame. Of course, he was never going to stand up to modern additions like Eugene and Naveen and title characters like Aladdin and Beast, but even among old schoolers, he's pretty lackluster. Eric likes to sail on boats.
Isn't this great?
Philip has one of the darkest and most intense action sequences in Disney history to back him up. Even Florian has the distinction of being the first Disney prince. He gets to kiss the girl awake. He climbs over walls and has a cool feather hat. Charming has no hat. He has very few minutes of screen time, even fewer lines of dialogue. One of the most commonly noted things about him is that we know far more about his father. We know nothing of his hobbies, interests, abilities. We don't really see him do anything except yawn. And he left the Disney dudes almost immediately.
Dudettes all over the land are sad today because Prince Charming has just announced that he is in fact leaving Disney Dudes.
How can I sit here and say that he and Cinderella have any sort of discernible chemistry, let alone a dynamic deserving of more than your basic dip, when one of these people is a husk of a man? Well, to answer that question, we have to go back. Back before the Starlit Princess Waltz, before I could incorporate Cinderella into my soul, and even before the concept of Disney princesses altogether. All the way back to 1950. I promise this isn't like a pretentious video essay thing. That's just when Cinderella came out.
I feel like you guys are all gaslighting me into thinking I'm super weird for not watching Cinderella recently.
Prince Charming may have some of the lowest screen time in our Disney Prince lineup, but that stat is slightly aided by the fact that said screen time is part of one of my favorite sequences in all of film history. 1950's Cinderella is an outstanding piece of art, with endlessly endearing characters, all-time classic music, and design and color choices guided by the fantastically amazing Mary Blair, which all combined to pull the Walt Disney Studio from the edge of bankruptcy and in many ways cemented their legacy in the cultural zeitgeist. It was a personal favorite of Walt's, this particular piece of animation being his favorite ever produced by the studio, and I would agree. I would say that was the correct call. Of all of the images that have ever come out of Walt Disney Animation, I'm not sure any quite embody the idea of Disney magic as do these few frames right here. Sure, the film has a bit of a dated format to it. Most modern films aren't half Tom and Jerry cartoon by runtime. The old school opening narration feels rather blunt to modern ears, but that doesn't make these segments bad. It just makes them a pool of a different temperature. You have to acclimate before you jump in. I feel confident in saying that this is early theatrical animation at its best. And the absolute best of the best is the sequence at the ball. Conveniently enough, also the section of the story where we get to see the prince. Now, what I am about to do is what we like to call extrapolation. Yes, the prince is a non-character to all those watching through the film for the first time, and probably the second, and the third. But having sat through this film very repeatedly as a child, and every time I needed a pick-me-up as an adult, I have noticed some things, and I have made some logical leaps. That being said, what information do we actually have about the prince? And how on earth could it possibly get me to cry?
We don't need another charming. All we need is you. And I think I'm charming too.
The first scene in which he's mentioned, we learn that he's out of town for an unspecified reason, and his father is planning to throw a ball on his return in order to hopefully force a romantic connection to happen, as the prince has silly romantic ideas.
I guess I have this silly idea that I want to be in love when I get married.
Unlike other versions, this is not a bargain that he's made with his dad. This ball is not an ultimatum. This is just his father being really pushy.
If all the eligible maidens in my kingdom just happen to be there.
From this, we know that the prince does have a soft heart. He wants love, is looking for it, and has apparently not found it in his travels or official duties. A prince who wants love, but cannot find it. He's a hopeless romantic. That's my first assumption. Now, once we get to the ball, we see the prince bowing in front of each of his guests, his father eagerly waiting for one to catch his eye. This is where we get the ever iconic yawn. Important to note, while he's doing this, he's looking up at his dad. He's directly flipping him off here. I see what you're doing, and you're wasting your time. Parading all of these girls in front of me isn't going to do anything. And here is my second assumption. You've got a guy being presented with every single young maiden in the land, dressed to the nines, looking their best, trying to impress him, and none of them do? Nobody catches his eye. Not only that, but he's confident that none of them will.
I feel nothing for these women. It's crazy to think I'm actually gonna fall in love with one of them.
Despite him actively looking for a romantic connection.
The dearest love in all the world is waiting somewhere for me.
I think the prince is asexual. It makes sense.
Never been alive.
Of course your look at all of the girls technique was never going to work. Next time, maybe try setting up a speed dating event. Then maybe he'd have a shot at getting to know someone. And this is where Cinderella enters the picture. Like in every version, Cinderella arrives fashionably late. But in this version, no one notices. A lot of adaptations have her enter at the top of a large flight of stairs. The whole room stops as they gawk at her beauty and dazzling dress. The room splits as she approaches the prince, everyone understanding that this here is the belle of the ball.
Do I love you because you're beautiful.
This has always seemed highly unlikely to me. This is a very rare reaction to get from any room, and all our girl has really done is show up in an above average dress.
They're all looking at you.
Believe me, they are all looking at you.
Yes, but why are they looking at her? It's because of you. It's because she's dancing with you. You are the prince. Like, I know it's a big dress, but you're at least half of the equation here, my dude.
Or are you beautiful because I love you?
Not so in this version. Cinderella finds herself wandering the unlit, unpopulated sections of the ballroom. Everyone else is waiting in line to be presented to the prince, and those who have already introduced themselves are staying nearby to hopefully catch his eye again. Cindy is working on a little bit of a crunched timetable. She ain't got time for a line that long, and she's not even really here to see the prince anyway. She is set on taking in as much of this place as possible, which, I mean, she's been locked in an attic for years, so can you really blame her? And this is where the movie begins its narration. This is a really cool framing device. Like, I honestly can't get enough of it.
No doubt you saw the whole pretty picture in detail.
The Grand Duke is musing on about how ridiculous it is to expect the prince to instantly fall in love, all the while the prince is approaching Cinderella as they speak.
But his heart tells him that here's the maid predestined to be his bride.
Now, the narration would suggest to you that this is love at first sight, but I'ma disagree on that. Again, Cinderella is in the unlit section of the room. She is a silhouette at this point. I don't think you get love at first sight privileges if you can't even see her. I mean, he can't see her eyes. She's not even singing a hauntingly beautiful siren melody at him. I just do not see an avenue through which Cupid can strike here. So what exactly is it that prompts him to move? Is it just the mystery factor? Again, here's my explanation. If it is not her beauty which captures him, we are left with very few other variables, namely where she is and what she is doing. She is not in line to see him. She's geeking out over the cool architecture, maybe. If we're being honest, she looks a little lost, and most notably, she's on her own. She got all dressed up, came to this big exciting party by herself. She didn't have anybody who wanted to go with her, no family members, no friend group, not even to see the prince, evidently, just content to wander around a little bit. That sounds really sad. And so, it is my impulse to say that the prince knows he's not getting out of this night without dancing with someone. And he sees this girl from across the room, not actively interested in him, just aimlessly wandering around by herself, clearly her first time at a function like this, and decides, you know what? That girl deserves to have a good night. If it's gonna be anyone, let's make it her. I imagine him walking up to her, like in the tone of a student leader at an after-school event, like, hey, you having a good time? My name's Henry. You should totally come join us for this next dance. It's gonna be a bunch of fun. You know, an extrovert who sees an introvert sitting on the sidelines and instinctively understands that they need an invitation to feel like they're allowed to participate, sort of thing. Big, going to sit with the kid who's sitting alone at lunch vibes. You feel me on this one? He's a sweet boy. Also, it's kind of his best shot at dancing with someone who's going to be themselves in front of him, which is his best case scenario at this point. This is where we get a couple of the shots which are reminiscent of our pose in the Starlit Princess Waltz. None of them are exact, but there's clearly inspiration here. The prince asks Cinderella to dance, and she accepts, and that's all we really know, because we don't get to hear their interaction. And then we transition into our musical number, which everyone loves to harp on because they just met and already they're convinced they're in love. But I would, again, like to offer a more charitable interpretation of the events here.
So this is love.
You'll sometimes hear that piece of trivia that other languages have dozens of different words for the term love, which it breaks it down into all sorts of different subcategories. How cool is that? But what that means is that the word love in English has a very variable definition. Most people seem to assume that they're talking about true love, pure love, a deep and profoundly held love. But love can also mean that you've just got a big dumb crush on somebody. And that's what I'm inclined to believe is happening here. Cinderella hasn't met a guy her age since she was like 9. So when this very kind, polite, and dare I say, charming man comes up to ask her to dance, she gets these nervous butterflies in her stomach that she's never had before and is like, ah, I see.
It's kind of cute.
They dance together for a bit. Cinderella is so unflappably genuine and full of wonder that she can't help but be endearing to the prince.
You're not like most girls, are you?
He's been stuck in this asexual nightmare of wanting to make a romantic connection, but being surrounded by people with an agenda, unable to interact with him in an authentic way. So after spending the evening with someone who is literally just here for a nice night, he too feels his heartbeat start to rise and his mind go numb, and he goes, oh, it's happening now. Now I know.
Now I know.
They both got their first crush on each other simultaneously. It's cute. There are a couple of really cool things going on with the filmmaking here that I'm not gonna be able to stop myself from mentioning. First off, this song gives us a montage of the evening. You might see this as a drawback because that means we don't have a solid foothold in any of their interactions, which fair. We probably would benefit from a dialogue sequence between our romantic couple somewhere in the story, but the presence of a montage does give the relationship a sort of plausible deniability, which I appreciate. We don't know how much time they spend together. It could be half an hour. It could be several hours. We don't know the depth of their discussion or any personal connections they make. It could have been crazy meaningful, but we, as an audience, aren't privy to that information. That's their business, not ours. This forced sense of distance is present in several other ways. Not only do we as an audience not get details on their interactions, but even their dancing is hidden away from the rest of the ball. Our first looks at their interactions take place through a monocle, and as mentioned, we are presented with an outsider's interpretation of their interactions. All that we can do is speculate.
Who is she? Do you know her? No, sire.
The camera is usually set at these long, wide shots. If not, our vision is obscured. And I don't know, there's something about the distance combined with the singing and the soft colors that makes it all feel like almost sacred. It's a respect of boundaries. It would be a mistake to try and get the theoretical camera too close to the characters, to encroach on their space and risk breaking the heavenly aura which surrounds them, which plays quite nicely with what we see of Prince Charming's behavior. I want to make a case for him as the most respectful, least toxically masculine of any of our Disney princes, at least pre everyone's character arcs. Our new additions have a lot of personality, but unfortunately, some of it does source from some womanizing qualities that they grow out of but aren't great.
All of you, standing around deciding my future?
Philip is immediately all invasive of Aurora's personal space, repeatedly grabbing her even after she very deliberately peels his hands off of her.
What are you doing?
He and Eric are both weirdly caught up on the specifics of the girls' voices, and even if Florian isn't technically crossing any physical boundaries, you can't tell me that this isn't the definition of an invasive entrance.
Oh!
Hello.
I can't stop watching it, it's so good.
Hello.
It's so bad, Snow immediately runs to go and hide from him.
Did I frighten you?
But Charming? Nah. The boldest thing this guy tries in his initial approach is to brush Cinderella's fingertips to get her attention, immediately pulls back, bows to show his respect. Cindy reciprocates, he asks for her hand again, and then they dance in this formal ballroom setting where this kind of stuff all makes sense. It's all way above board. And then, once they're in private, it remains so perfectly wholesome. They hold hands. They walk by the fountain. They decide to ballroom dance in the garden, probably to some horribly distant music at that point. They walk over a bridge and touch shoulder to shoulder before getting flustered and pulling back. Do you see why I think at least one person in this equation must be Ace?
First, he told me he liked how I looked, and then we had a little, Eye contact.
If you view this all through the lens of, I have just gotten my first crush on somebody, it makes a lot of sense. When they finally do go in for the kiss, it's this timid lean across the table for a peck kind of thing. It's so stupidly innocent. It's delightful. I also want to give props to So This Is Love just on a musical level. It has this humming motif, which is almost hypnotic. It has this lullaby quality about it. And I think it fits perfectly with the framing of this song as a internal monologue rather than a musical number. You know, because most of the time when you're humming to yourself. The duet is formatted so that Cinderella and Charming are moving toward each other melodically. Cinderella stays closer to the bottom of her register and the prince to the top of his, sort of inversing the typical gender roles you would expect of the parts, symbolizing their unity. That's clever and cute and unique, and I love it. And then the clock. And this is where everything gets locked in for Charming. He's had a nice evening with this girl, even worked up the nerve to kiss her. And if there was any doubt in his mind that this connection wasn't real, that perhaps his status had her dazzled, that she only was so open and kind because of the title, all of that gets expertly obliterated in this lovely comedy routine.
You can't go now, it's only...
Oh, I must. Please. Please, I must.
But why?
Well, Oh, the prince. I haven't met the prince.
The prince? But didn't you know that...
Goodbye.
She didn't even know I was the prince. She hung out with me all night and wanted to connect with me on a human level as just some dude? Some Disney dude?
My heart has wings.
I think I have to see her again. Just like all great stories, it is in the exact moment where our character recognizes how much they have that it all must disappear. Now, is it a little weird that he didn't know her name? Yeah, but let's not pretend like we haven't all been at least like a good 45 minutes into a meaningful discussion with a new acquaintance and realized, I don't know this person's name. And at this point, I'm kind of too afraid to ask. Is it weird? Yeah, but is it unthinkable? Absolutely not. Also, I love how genuinely confused Prince Charming is in this sequence.
It's midnight.
Yes, so it is.
Now, that's all we see of the prince until the wedding, but we do have some additional dialogue about him from the king and the duke. The line of most importance here is, he's determined to marry her.
The prince, sire, swears he'll marry none but the girl who fits this slipper.
Now remember, in this version of the story, there is no bargain, no ultimatum. He was not forced to select a bride during this ball. He has seemingly come to this conclusion on his own. Now, does this mean that Charming had one conversation with a girl and instantly decided that she's marriage material? I mean, not necessarily. Here's the way I see it. He needs to see this girl again. The last minute revelation that she didn't know he was the prince has left him with so many questions and such high hopes that he's confident he won't be able to stop thinking about her. But is the kingdom going to expend a bunch of resources to go and find this mystery woman if he just really wants to hang out again? Probably not. But if he says he wants to marry her, he knows his dad is going to move heaven and earth to get them in the same room again. So he's presented with a bit of a conundrum. Do I commit to wedding this woman, who I know I at least like, before either of us can be certain what we actually have? Or do I bet that I'll be able to find someone else I'll be more sure about before I am inevitably forced into a marriage of necessity?
If he agrees and they get married, you do gain him as a permanent, valuable resource.
And he decides to trust his first instinct and gamble on the good thing that he knows is within reach. So, all of this put together, I think we can get a pretty clear picture of who this guy is.
You, sir, are supposed to be charming.
He is a proactively kind and thoughtful, hopeless romantic ace, respectful to a fault to those he sees as deserving, confident in his convictions, and who trusts his personal intuition with his life, wherever it might lead him. Within the Disney Prince lineup, he is not necessarily the smartest, strongest, bravest, or even the most charming, but he is, like, most likely to start fostering kittens, you know? Meow, 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 meow. Meow, 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 meow. maybe not kittens, because Cindy has all of her mice friends. And so, well, but they would be raising the kittens, so they could raise them with the mice, so that they're friends. And that would be cute. I'm a little off track, but you get what I'm saying, right? He's the resident softie. And if you think this much analysis is reaching a little bit, I completely understand. But there is at least one other person who agrees with me on this, because that is exactly how he's portrayed in the sequels.
What were the mice using them for this time?
Boats.
Ah yes, Disney direct-to-DVD sequels. What fun these are!
Obviously, Lion King 2 slaps, you already know that. It's good, and everyone's talking about it.
Of most interest to us today is Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, which features Charming extensively. The setup is that 1 year after the events of the first film, the stepmother has gotten her hands on the fairy godmother's magic wand and reverses time to manipulate the prince into believing it was Anastasia who he danced with at the ball. We certainly see some of those aforementioned silly romantic ideas to support our hopeless romantic angle.
You found true love. That's all I want.
He is overly gracious and polite to Anastasia all through her many, many screw-ups.
I just don't know what's wrong with me today.
Oh, no, it was my fault. I'm afraid I'm just not up to date on the latest dance steps.
He's just the most stand-up guy you could ask for through this whole scenario. Throughout most of the movie, Charming is actively under magical mind manipulation, but this boy's intuition is so strong, not even that can stop him.
Something's wrong.
He can tell the vibes are off, and he is willing to trust that instinct to the extent that he believes birds and talking mice when they tell him he's got the wrong girl.
All right, I'm coming.
He goes out of his way to compliment them, by the way.
Loved the song.
Like, based on the time gap here, he got at least halfway down the hall, stopped, and thought, I really should go tell those mice that their theatrics were top-notch. And then he does it.
Oh, thanks.
He's banking on this instinct so hard that he proposes to this woman, having not really talked to her and not knowing her name.
Will you marry me, Cinderella?
Yes, but actually, it's Cinderella.
Cinderella!
He's too sweet for this world. He's too good. They do add in here that he's an accomplished fencer and trapezist, maybe? And this movie certainly frames him as convinced that what he found at the ball was true love, rather than just his best shot at true love, like I theorized.
She was the one! I know it.
But overall, he is still our soft and squishy Boy Scout.
Wait, hold on. I think I understand. Actually, I got nothing.
Still unconvinced this guy has a personality worth exploring? According to reports, filming for a Prince Charming movie starring Chris Hemsworth, for some reason, starts this year to be released in 2026. Now, I am skeptical of this. I am very skeptical of this. However, on board to direct the film is Paul King. If you don't know, the director of the recent Wonka movie and the Paddington franchise. Movies with the exact energy that Prince Charming is channeling. It's literally teddy bear vibes, which is why he makes such a perfectly fitting match for Cinderella. All versions of the Cinderella story, the 1950 adaptation especially, are stories about abuse. We are denied a look into Cinderella's life when it was happy, so that we too are lulled into the sense that things have always been this way. Her home is framed as a literal prison from which she cannot leave. This movie has one of the most traumatic sequences you will ever see in a G-rated film. It feels genuinely violating to watch. You can feel Cinderella is a broken soul, convinced that dreaming is the only good thing in her life, and even then warns herself and others against it because it is inherently dangerous to harbor hope.
So if you don't want to lose a nice warm bed, you'd better get rid of those dreams.
She comes to terms with every terrible weight put on her back so very quickly. It is so disheartening to watch. And to see such a thoroughly shattered person be led into the tender hands of the gentlest, kindest, most considerate and caring prince in all of Disney history is such an overwhelming catharsis to experience. She has found the one person observant enough to move to help her, confident enough in his own intuition to commit to her happiness in the given time frame, and who is impulsively going to see her as an equal because that's what he's looking for. Pair her with anyone else and it doesn't work. She does not have the bandwidth to deal with the likes of Eugene or Aladdin. Pair her with Florian or Philip and she gets overstimulated real quick. Charming was always the only option. And that is the special magic which makes this relationship work for me. It is beautiful in its simplicity and mundanity. It is gentle and it is slow and it is comfortable. Cozy, even. This is not about love at first sight or beauty or innate sexual attraction. This is a relationship about understanding and healing. It is about finding someone you finally feel safe around and committing to not letting that feeling fade, which is why it would be such a mistake if they ended it on a dip. As far as traditional ballroom dancing goes, the dip is one of the more sexually charged moves on the table. It's a step which intentionally puts the dip-ee in a sort of vulnerable position and so can convey a great amount of trust, but also sort of invites the excitement of the risk.
Do you trust me?
It's close, it's intimate, it's tantalizing. In short, the exact opposite of everything that we know about Cinderella and Charming, who we have defined by their distance, their boundaries, their quiet and calming aura. Arguably, these two demand an alternative to the dip more so than our other couples do. And this pose specifically encapsulates that difference perfectly. The prince showing affection in the most respectful, opt-in way possible, and both of them blushing up a storm at even that level of closeness. It is distant and yet still very genuine. The only couple with more physical space separating them at this point is Rosie and Louis, and who knows what's up with them. That's why it made me cry, is because it was unexpected. It went out of its way to capture the essence of their relationship in a way not many other people pick up on. I felt seen, and that'll make you cry sometimes. I see a princess in you.
Everyone is a princess.
And you want to know the crazy thing? This is the only recording of this show that I can find with this choreography in it. Yeah, I've done my best to search around for other recordings of this show. There's one playlist with 100 different versions and I've scrubbed through them all, but in no other recording have I found this specific pose. In many versions, the couples just lean towards each other at the end. Sometimes it's a dip. There are several where there is a hand kiss, but she leans into it, or where the prince is just taking her hand, which are on the right track, but like not quite there. You know, sometimes they do it after the show as everyone shuffles to the exit. In this recording, they do it, but it's a little different and it feels much more stilted in execution. There's only the one recording that clicks so perfectly in my head. It is lightning in a bottle. So props to these two performers. They embodied their characters perfectly. In fact, props to all of the character performers. There's a recording that I found with a great view of all of the characters exiting the stage. Starlit Princess Waltz Disneyland Paris 4K, and there's some great stuff. Eugene does the cool guy jump down the stairs and Rapunzel shakes her head. Perfect. Aladdin is doing plain arms like he's a 10-year-old, and then Jasmine joins in. Fantastic. Can't get enough of it. If you're into Disney princess lore and want to have a good time, I highly recommend pulling up one of the hundreds of recordings of this show and looking for those little details that the character actors are adding in. They're making the real magic here. It might even make you cry. And if it doesn't, you can always just listen to Long Live the Queen.
Long live the Queen!
Common knowledge when you reach 30, you have to know the Disney princesses.